The hope is that Jayden Daniels will be the Washington Commanders starting quarterback for the next 10 years or more. So is it okay that his ranking is starting off in the bottom 10 of the NFL quarterbacks? And is it fair? That and more on this mailbag episode of Locked On Commanders.
You are Locked On Commanders, your daily podcast on the Washington Commanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody, and welcome into today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, David Harrison, credential member in the media covering the Washington Commanders for CommanderGameDay.com, and I'm here with you every Monday through Friday, and I appreciate you coming through today for this episode. Every dayers, I appreciate you for coming through every single day. Welcome back to today's episode. On this episode, we are going to talk about how big a difference it is when your coaching staff is the guys that you want to be coaching with. Who are the standout undrafted free agents after 2 practices heading into our third on Wednesday? And where might this secondary seek out improvements in 2024? But first, is it fair to start Jayden Daniels off in the bottom 10 of starting NFL quarterback rankings this season? Or should he be getting a little bit more benefit of the doubt as the number 2 overall pick and a Heisman Trophy winner? Of course, if you want to discuss this episode or anything we're talking about in this mailbag episode, you can hit me up with your questions, with your comments by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. Become a Locked On Commanders insider today. From there, you will get messages, content, analysis, and more delivered directly to you from me on your phone via text message. I text you, you text me, we converse, no downloads, no hashtags, none of that stuff is needed. You get texts during press conferences, practices, games, off days, whenever you want them, maybe even sometimes when you don't want them. I'm up pretty late most nights, so if you're texting me and you don't want to be woken up, please make sure you return or you turn off the notifications for my text messages when you go to bed, because sometimes we're burning that midnight oil, I'll tell you what. So we're going to open up this mailbag talking about Jayden Daniels. Chad from YouTube, actually, really good question came through. Chad wrote in, just watched half a deep dive on the Commanders. I was surprised to see Jayden Daniels ranked 32nd in passing and more criticism than I heard elsewhere on the net about it. The person has a following, so his view should be considered, even if off the cuff, I think he's wrong. If considering projected starting passers only, I see how someone may think, say, a vet like Jacoby Brissett could be considered better than an unknown rookie, and that Drake May for 2024 won't see the field unless injured or there's an injury. But I'm not sure Daniels is going to be the worst passing starter in the National Football League. What projected starting quarterback would you rank Daniels ahead of? So important to remember, we're talking in this context of this question, we're talking about passing only, right? This is just passing. So we're kind of taking out the athleticism of it. I don't know who this person is that Chad was seeing the rankings of for Jayden Daniels being the number 32 ranked projected NFL starting quarterback this season. But I'm not a big fan of quarterback rankings anyway, to be quite honest with you, especially quarterback rankings that put rookies ahead of veterans. Now, like in-season quarterback rookie or rankings is one thing. Even like preseason, after you've seen them a couple times, that's one thing. But like quarterback rankings in May, especially when you're putting rookies ahead of veterans, to me, kind of just a little bit of putting the cart before the horse, because again, veterans at least have some experience. They've been in the league. You know what's going to happen to them. Like, you never know, man. This could be a Jamarcus Russell situation, or it could be an Andrew Luck situation, right? And even if it's Andrew Luck situation, he might be out of the league in less than 10 years anyway. So just kind of a get off my grass type of moment. But there is obviously some conversation there. And as long as we're talking about projections, so like power rankings to me are not projections. Power rankings are like, here are who the best quarterbacks are in the NFL right now. And to me, that's where I think you can't put a rookie on that list. I just wouldn't rank him at all. I would maybe call it veteran quarterback, but however you want to frame it so that the rookies don't even get on there. Because again, they haven't taken a live snap yet. At least wait till preseason. But if we're talking about projections, then okay, obviously you have a little bit of room, right? So Pro Football Focus's Trevor Sickham, a good friend of mine, ranked his projected starting 32 quarterbacks, and he kind of cheated, threw some slashes in there, right? Like Denver Broncos quarterback Jarrett Stidham / Bo Nix, for example, could be either of those guys, and he ranked them 32nd in the NFL. I agree wholeheartedly with that ranking. Stidham is a veteran, so in some sense, you could be like, well, Stidham automatically should be ranked higher than a rookie because Stidham has actually played the game at an NFL level. But again, if you're talking projections, then I think you get more into the level of fairness for putting a veteran behind a rookie. So I can get behind that, right? So I would expect more projection-wise out of Jayden Daniels than I would Jarrett Stidham or Bo Nix. veteran, rookie, or no. And that's as a pure passer. You add in the athleticism for Jayden Daniels and the offense that he's going to play with under Cliff Kingsbury. And I expect even more out of Jayden than I do Jarrett Stidham or Bo Nix. And the same goes for Sam Darnold / JJ McCarthy of the Minnesota Vikings, Aiden O'Connell / Gardner Minshew of the Las Vegas Raiders, who are probably, I would put Aiden O'Connell / Gardner Minshew 31st. I would put the Broncos 32nd. I would put that duo in Las Vegas 31st. I would probably put Sam Darnold, JJ McCarthy at 30. And honestly, the upside long-term for the Vikings is better with JJ, but we'll see what ends up happening there. Will Levis in Tennessee. I would put Jayden Daniels projected as a passer over him. Bryce Young in Carolina, Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh, Derek Carr in New Orleans, Kyler Murray in Arizona, Tua Tagovailoa in Miami, if not for his weapons, honestly. So context matters too, right? And Kyler Murray, I think, is probably the line there. Derek Carr, I wanted to have a lot of faith in him when he went to New Orleans. I used to rally for him to go to Tampa from Las Vegas when their opportunity arose. Just a big letdown, to be quite honest with you. I just don't think it's going to work out there. Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh, man, that's just been a nightmare. And I don't necessarily put it all on Sean Payton. I think Sean Payton certainly had his own problems last year in Denver. Nathaniel Hackett had his own problems the year before that in Denver. But you know what, man, there's one constant in both those situations, and it's Russell Wilson. So I don't have a lot of confidence in that match in Pittsburgh. Tua Tagovailoa, again, like if you take away the weapons, we'll talk about that later. Anyway, so context matters, right? So could Caleb Williams put up more passing numbers than Jayden Daniels? Certainly, right? Because DJ Moore is on the team, Keenan Allen's on the team, Rome Odunze is on the team. I think DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze is better than Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, and Luke McCaffrey going into the season. Now, by the end of the season, I could think differently. Maybe Keenan Allen has fallen off a little bit. Maybe DJ Moore is not as good a receiver as we think he is, even if he has a better quarterback. And maybe Rome Odunze doesn't blow the league up as a rookie the way that a lot of people think he will. So certainly things could change there. But I think that when you talk about who could have more numbers and who's the better quarterback, those are two completely different conversations in my book. So could Caleb Williams have better numbers? Sure. When you come away with it, if you watch all the Bears games, all the Commanders games, could you see Caleb Williams have better stats and still think Jayden Daniels is a better quarterback? I think absolutely you could. I think Jacoby Brissett will be the better passer in 2024, but I wouldn't be shocked if Jayden Daniels' stats rivaled his, to be quite honest with you. If Drake May starts in New England, I think Jayden is going to surpass that starting quarterback. Daniel Jones is going to be hurt by the loss of running back Saquon Barkley. And if he beats Jayden in passing, I think it'll be the two games that the Giants play against the Commanders defense that dictates that. So if the Commanders defense can be better, more on that here in just a little bit, then I think Jones is going to be hurt significantly by people knowing that he doesn't have the run game or the running back threat out of the backfield than he used to. And I think people are going to defend him a lot easier or a lot better because of it. So I think there's at least 5 quarterback situations. I listed a lot that could be, but I think there's at least 5 quarterback situations where Daniels is going to be a more effective, more statistically relevant passer in 2024. So that makes him number 27 or better, which is still bottom 10 in my preseason list if I had to make one. Now, he is number 27 on Trevor Sikkema's list, so that fits. Now, as an all-around quarterback, if you bring athleticism into it, I would put Jayden Daniels ahead of anything the Broncos got going, anything the Vikings got going, the Raiders. I put him ahead of Will Levis, ahead of Bryce Young in Carolina, ahead of Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh, Derek Carr in New Orleans, Jacoby Brissett in New England, and Daniel Jones in New York. So that makes him 23rd at worst, which is right inside the bottom 10, but you're definitely getting closer to that line of being not in the bottom 10. So when you factor in his legs, and again, just the team context, I don't think necessarily that Bryce Young is a terrible quarterback, but I think he's in a terrible situation. And because of it, his skill set is not going to be accentuated as much. I also think Jayden and Kyler Murray could have very similar stat lines depending on how quickly Marvin Harrison Jr. develops this season. So in a vacuum, again, the same weapons matter or different weapons matter. So in a vacuum, if you have the same weapons for both quarterbacks, I would take Jayden Daniels over Tua Tagovailoa. I think if Washington and Miami were to trade quarterbacks today, Miami looks more dangerous, and Washington honestly takes a step back in hype, if you ask me. I could be wrong there. Maybe I just have some unknown Tua Tagovailoa hate. I don't hate the guy. I don't seem to hate the guy. I just think that he's being made more by the offense and the weapons around him than it's him making the offense and the weapons around him run, if that makes a lot of sense. And remember, before those weapons arrived, wasn't doing all that hot. So that's what all this is right now. It's hype, it's projection. And so because it's in the light of projection, I'm okay having this conversation. So that being said, is Jayden Daniels a bottom 10 quarterback in the NFL right now? I think it's fair to put him there. But again, the idea is for him to be a starting quarterback Washington for the next 10 years, not just this year. So that's okay for a starting point now. By the end of the season, coming into next season, obviously you want to see him a little bit higher up there. For those who are wondering, Caleb Williams ranked number 19 in Trevor Sikkema's projected starting quarterback ranking. So do with that what you will. Coming up next, we're going to move on into our mailbag episode, secondary improvements, standout undrafted free agents, and coaching staff harmony, all coming up in the mailbag. That's coming up next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we're doing that thanks to our friends over at Yahoo Finance. Wouldn't it be great if you could see all of your investments and retirement accounts all in one place? With Yahoo Finance, you can consolidate your view from multiple accounts into one hub and access the expert analysis you need to tend to your entire portfolio with confidence. For example, if you have an investment account with Schwab and a 401k with Fidelity, you could be using Yahoo Finance to consolidate them in one place, which has made it incredibly easy to manage both. For more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. Whether you're a seasoned investor or are looking for that extra guidance, Yahoo Finance gives you all the tools and data you need in one place. They are the number one financial destination, producing a holistic look at the financial news cycle, including breaking news, original editorial perspectives, analyst ratings, independent research, customizable charts, and so much more. For comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com, the number one financial destination, yahoofinance.com. That is yahoofinance.com. Thanks again for making Locked On Commanders your first listen, to your first view today and every day. Thanks for coming through like you do. Come back tomorrow. We will have another episode. We got OTA practice number 2 for the media. OTA practice number, I'm honestly not sure which practice it is for the Commanders themselves. I think it's like 5 or 6. I'll get a number tomorrow when we get out there. But open OTA practice number 2 for us. So we will have plenty to discuss. Also expected to hear from Coach Dan Quinn, I believe, and a handful of players. So we will have plenty of things to talk about again. And also make sure you're checking out the YouTube streams and Twitter accounts for the Commanders, because they will stream all of that great information. In the meantime, check out Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every single day to bring you the biggest stories without all of the screaming that you get at some of these other networks. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or for free on the Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Insider Steven came through, texted me a question, and he did so by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders. Became an insider. Greatly appreciate Steven and all of the other insiders, the ever-growing group of insiders. Every week we're getting new insiders, and I appreciate every single one of you and do my best to respond to every single one of you as soon as I can. Steven said, do you think the rookies and free agents acquired can make this secondary any better than it was? Last year's unit surrendered so many big plays throughout the season. Also, do you think a rookie nickel corner and safety will play prominent roles for this unit? So kind of a two-parter. Here's what I will say. Do I think rookies and free agents acquired can make the secondary any better than it was? Certainly. I think when you look at Jeremy Chin, he could certainly make this unit better than it was. I think when you look at Mike Sainristil, certainly could make this unit better than it was. Michael Davis as a starting cornerback opposite Benjamin St-Juste could certainly make this unit better than it was. Now, if you caught yesterday's episode, I did a position group by position group, where they got better in the position group, where they stayed the same, where they potentially got worse, and then overall, did the unit get better, stay the same, or get worse? And I did say I think the secondary on paper right now stayed the same. And the reason is that I want to get too far ahead of myself in crowning Jeremy Chin as this Cam Curl plus. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself crowning Mike Sainristil as the Quan Martin or Danny Johnson plus. And I don't want to get too far ahead of myself saying that Michael Davis is going to come in and just be head and shoulders better as a perimeter corner than Emmanuel Forbes was in his rookie season. Although you kind of don't have that high of a bar to clear if you're Michael Davis trying to be a better perimeter corner than Emmanuel Forbes was last year. Whether that's Emmanuel's fault, whether it's the coaching's fault, again, that's not part of that conversation. But bottom line is you expect an upgrade there. So yes, I do think some of the guys that are drafted, I do think some of the guys that have been brought in. Also, you look at a guy like Chigozie Anuzium, the undrafted cornerback out of Colorado State. He got some reps against Terry McLaurin in the ones in the first OTA practice that we got to see. I'm very interested to see if he's going to get more on Wednesday and how he does there. I think he was a better cover guy in that first OTA practice than I honestly expected him to be. So I was very pleasantly, not surprised completely, but pleasantly I don't even know, whatever lesser word of surprise is. But I do think that Jeremy Chinn's going to be better overall than Cam Curl. I think the biggest difference in this secondary from the last time we saw them in 2023 to the first time you see them in 2024 will be the return of Derek Forrest. Healthy Derek Forrest, Defoe back. I think Defoe and Jeremy Chinn are your two safeties. That's who I've got penciled in there. Free safety and strong safety. I think that's your duo. I think Quan Martin basically works a rotational role as a backup free safety and maybe a backup nickel. I think that's basically his role, which gives you a lot of versatility. So again, if they want to bring Jeremy Chinn down in the box in like a linebacker role, maybe you see Derek Forrest and Quan Martin back there. Derek Forrest maybe is more of that strong safety role in that aspect. And then, Quan is more your free safety. Teams want to go 4 or 5 wide. Maybe you see Mike Sainristil and Quan Martin in the slot. So I think there's just a lot of versatility in that group in general, and certainly a lot of potential to get better as a unit. And I think that the absence of Derek Forrest for a lot of last season was a big part of that ultimate failure of that secondary unit. Again, Michael Davis versus Emmanuel Forbes. I think you like that veteran ability, that proven talent that you've seen in Los Angeles on tape. And then Benjamin St. Juste versus bad coaching. I am really hoping. I actually just got done talking about this for Standing Room Only, Ben Standing's podcast from The Athletic. Whenever, I don't know if he's putting that up on Tuesday night or when, I'm pretty sure it's Tuesday night. But we had a conversation about Benjamin St. Juste, and he and I have talked about this before, where he doesn't really place a lot of blame on the defensive players for what happened last year because of how bad the coaching was. I think I probably put a little bit more on the players' shoulders than he does, but I do think it's very fair to say that the coaching or lack thereof deserves a lot of blame for 2023. And I'm really hoping that maybe Benjamin St. Juste, because if you go back to 2022 and what he was developing into under the tutelage of Chris Harris, before Chris eventually went to the Tennessee Titans in 2023, I mean, Ben was on his way, man. Like Benjamin St. Juste was looking like a very legitimate NFL perimeter cornerback. And then last year, just the bottom fell out. But it didn't just fall out for him. It fell out for everybody. So I'm really hoping that Benjamin St. Juste this year can recapture that momentum, recapture that development and progress, and maybe even get better. And if that happens, then I think absolutely the secondary gets better. Merle came through and asked, which undrafted free agents are impressing in OTAs? So again, we only got one OTA practice. We did have rookie camp, so we got to see the rookies, the undrafted free agents as well, twice so far. One of the guys standing out to me, we've already talked about him. We're going to talk about him again. Cornerback Chigozie Anuzium, undrafted free agent corner out of Colorado State, was brought in, was highly sought after. I think the report was half the league was trying to sign him. He decided to sign with the Washington Commanders. A lot of praise for his physicality, tackling ability, all that kind of stuff. And that's a lot of stuff that honestly you don't get to see in this portion of the offseason program. So he was kind of one of those players where it's like, okay, I'm excited to see him, but right now he's probably not really going to be able to flash, but he flashed anyway in OTAs. Again, he made a couple of really good plays against Terry McLaurin. I was watching Jayden Daniels in that group practice at one point, and I was told by another media member who knew I was watching Chigozie. They came over, they're like, hey, Dave, Chigozie just made another really good play on Terry. So that's 3 good plays on Terry McLaurin, I'm counting, and that's no small feat. So Chigozie Anuzium certainly earning some attention. Wide receiver Marcus Rosemy-Jack Saints out of Georgia. He's a guy that I kind of started paying attention to at the combine, met with his agent, talked a little bit with his representatives, just getting to know who he is from their lens. Really good kid, really good ball security guy, really strong hands. And he has made some really good plays. He made the catch of the day at rookie minicamp, I think, and he had some really good plays. Again, at OTAs, I've heard coaches praising him for his practice ability, for his practice intuition, really just making a lot of moves for himself. Not to the point where I'm going to predict him on the 53-man roster yet, but I do think he's working his way there. And then Colson Yankoff, undrafted free agent tight end out of UCLA. By way of Washington, started off Washington Huskies as a quarterback. Eventually, he played like a little bit of wide receiver, a little bit of running back, a little bit of tight end, fullback. He's got some return juice in him, like special teams ace. Like this dude, he's a baller, man. Colson Yankoff is just a football player. And again, with the standards right now, less physicality, no tackling, no hitting, all those things. Hard to see a guy like that fully, but certainly is a guy who has caught my attention. Colson Yankoff out of UCLA, along with cornerback Chigozie Anuzium and wide receiver Marcus Rosemy-Jack Saint. We're going to wrap up this mailbag episode of Locked On Commanders, talking about coaching staff harmony and how important it is. That's next on today's episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Wrapping up today's mailbag episode of Locked On Commanders with Gary, who came through and said, I noticed how the current coordinators are bringing their own people in. Eric Bieniemy did not do that. He basically tried to run his system with Turner's people. Doesn't this difference create more optimism for this offense? Was the lack of change for EB due to Eric not being able to get people because of the lame duck status of the coaching staff or his hubris? I ask because I feel really positive about this team moving forward. And to move forward, you have to understand your mistakes from the past. Gary, Insider Gary, greatly appreciate you coming through. I think that's a very good question. I think it's a very good observation. And it's got multiple levels to this thing. And I want to be clear in what I think is speculation on my part and what is fact. Fact. Eric Bieniemy did not coach an offensive staff that he put together. Bottom line fact. Honestly, I put it more he coached Ron Rivera's offensive coaching staff than it was Scott Turner's offensive coaching staff. That's how I kind of put it, and again, that part is speculation. So take it for what it's worth. I wasn't here when Ron Rivera got hired. I wasn't here when Scott Turner got hired. So maybe there's a part of that story that I'm missing, but from my viewpoint of it, it's more Ron Rivera's guys than it was anybody else's guys. Again, I could be wrong on that whole thing, but really the whole Eric Bieniemy hiring thing, it was kind of weird anyway. And I kind of mentioned it in the days and weeks leading up to the hiring. I didn't harp on it too much because what I really didn't want to do was lay down a layer of poisoned water where Eric Bieniemy came in and, at least from my coverage, just kind of never had a chance, right? But I mentioned it several times on Locked On NFL. I mentioned several times on Locked On Commanders once Eric Bieniemy to Washington became kind of a real thing. Again, didn't harp on it too much, but it's out there. The whole Eric Bieniemy thing leaving Kansas City was weird to me because it was sort of middle to late regular season in 2022 that the Kansas City Chiefs, Andy Reid specifically, started really, really rallying for Eric Bieniemy to get some pub and for Eric Bieniemy to be getting credit for the offense of Kansas City. So much so that it was like, nah, bro, you're trying to sell some magic beans that ain't growing. There was actually one instance, and I don't remember the report. I don't remember the newspaper or anything like that, the outlet. So, forgive me. But there was literally a reporter who got an exclusive interview with Andy Reid for the sole purpose of talking about how important Eric Bieniemy is to the Kansas City Chiefs offense. That's weird. That's just straight out campaigning to have one of your quote unquote top coaches taken away from you. That doesn't really happen. You know what I mean? Like, you don't hear coaches, like, they'll get prompted, like how key is this coordinator? Oh man, he's been really great. He's worked a lot. But like a head coach going out of his way, granting an exclusive to try to push this coordinator onto people, it just seems weird, man. And time again, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce would talk about, coaches, and it was always Andy Reid. And then there would be like a weird moment where it's like, oh yeah, by the way, also Eric Bieniemy. It's like, come on, man. So it just felt weird. You know what I mean? And you have to remember Ron Rivera is an Andy Reid guy. So I honestly feel like this is a situation where Andy Reid basically told Ron Rivera, look, man, Eric Bieniemy is going to bring you some excitement. He's going to bring you some discipline, and he's going to put some butts in the seats early in the season. You need to give him a chance. Hey, Eric, Ron Rivera's got an opening. This is an opportunity for you to really go in there and make your mark. And everybody's going to give you all the credit. You need to take that job. It feels like Andy Reid basically just kind of orchestrated this whole thing because once Eric Bieniemy wasn't getting a head coaching job again, it was just like, hey, dude, like, it's time to move on. And basically the Chiefs didn't want him anymore for whatever reason. And that's just the way it felt. You know what I mean? So I think when you ask why wasn't Eric Bieniemy able to bring his own coaching staff in, at least from the offensive standpoint, I think that's why. Because this wasn't a move. Like, it was sold and we all talked about it as this is the opportunity for Eric Bieniemy to prove that he can be head coach of the NFL, which was true. But it was also the opportunity for Eric Bieniemy to prove to everybody once and for all why he wasn't getting those offers. And when he ends up out of this position and he ends up in college at UCLA, nobody is out here pounding the table saying it's an absolute atrocity that Eric Bieniemy is not getting a job. And look, I like EB. I like talking to him, man. I talked to him after the last game of the year, kind of had the vibe that he wasn't coming back, no matter what happened with Ron Rivera and that staff. But I just, and it was sad for me because I dig the guy. I like talking to him. But I think as a coach, he's got a lot of shortcomings. One of those is he's incredibly stubborn, not nearly as, intuitive as he claimed to be, not nearly as, focused on putting people in the right place for them. He's more focused on putting people in the right place for him. And that doesn't work in Kansas City either. Like, you watch Kansas City Chiefs, man, that's not Chiefs football. And it certainly, was Commanders football. So I think that's the reason. This coaching staff, yes, like Dan Quinn, I think what Dan Quinn has done a really good job of is giving his people the people they need to be successful. And that, I think, is a very underrated value, because a lot of times what coaches do is they say, I'm the head coach. Here's all my dudes. Okay, all my dudes, you now work together. But like Cliff Kingsbury comes in here, and Cliff Kingsbury is like going after guys that he's worked with, guys that he knows, guys that he trusts. But he's also getting some guys that Dan Quinn knows and trusts. He's also getting some guys that this guy knows and trusts. Like, they really are just kind of like melting pot this thing together and saying, look, you know some people, I know some people, we all know each other. 6 degrees of Dan Quinn. We all know each other in a certain way, shape, or form. We're all going to get to know each other. Let's make this thing work. And I think it's a brilliant strategy. I think it's a great way to go about it. So I do think it matters. Like, coaching with people that you want to coach with absolutely matters. Coaching with someone you feel there's a future with absolutely matters. And, from Jump Street, man, Eric Bieniemy was basically brought in here to be the drill sergeant that's going to fix the offense. So if you're, Tavita Pritchard came in, he's a new coach, Bobby Ingram. But again, the majority of the coaching staff was basically the same, left over or promoted from previously, right? And I think that there might have been some resentment in there of, oh, you're here to fix me. You're here to fix my offense. You're here to fix my unit. That's never a way that you want to go. So again, those are just kind of my thought. Again, a lot of it is speculation. A lot of it's just kind of like me trying to read the tea leaves. Could be wrong, could be off base, but just, yeah, I think that's basically how it happened, how it unfolded. And fortunately for us, we are on to a new chapter and hopefully a better chapter. One piece of news before we get out of here: joint practices are happening. Miami Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel unveiled to Miami media that they are having a joint practice with every single team they are playing this preseason. One of those teams, week 2, Washington Commanders in Miami. So we will be down in Miami, Locked On Commanders. We will be down there for at least 3 days, if not more, because we're going to be down there for the day of practice, the day between, and the day of the game. So that's 3 days. I mean, I got to fly in some point. So 4 or 5 days. Really, we'll be down there in Miami to cover those joint practices. The Commanders also have the New York Jets week 1, potentially a joint practice opportunity there as well. We don't know that for sure yet. And then they finish up week 3 at home against the New England Patriots. I don't see any joint practices happening in that situation, but we're at least getting one joint practice this preseason. Those are always fun. Those are always exciting. So that's going to wrap it up. Thanks for the questions, everybody. Appreciate you coming through. Commanders fans always coming through with the killer questions, and I appreciate it. Coming up tomorrow, we will talk about practice. OTA practice number 2 open to the media. We will be there. In the meantime, if you got questions or comments, throw them down in the YouTube comment section or text me directly by becoming a Locked On Commanders insider. Go to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnCommanders to do that today. Don't forget to check out Locked On Sports Today, the first ever 24/7 live streaming sports channel on YouTube. As always, thank you for making Locked On Commanders your first listen of the day, every day. Thanks for coming through on a consistent basis like you do. Until we speak again, if you're out and about, please be safe, be kind, and I'll see you next time right back here for another episode of Locked On Commanders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.